Missouri is not uniquely unlucky nor cursed, so cut it out, negative Nancy's.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso, and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. Coming up on the program, I'm going to talk a little bit about those Missouri Tigers in the NFL Combine and some updates on the offensive line, especially from Eli Drinkwitz. Before we get going, I do want to remind you today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And after that heartbreaker on Saturday, Missouri really let an opportunity slip away, of course, in Nashville against Vanderbilt. And one thing I said in my previous episode recapping the ball game was that I felt pretty confident when Missouri had a 3-point lead with 9 seconds left. Well, I had one person comment that basically, Tyus Edney says hi or whatever, and Mizzou'd it up, as if Missouri can never get a break, or Missouri is uniquely cursed, or something like that. Well, specifically as to this particular ending of the Vanderbilt game, if you're bringing up something from 30 years ago, you're actually making my point, because that type of thing doesn't happen very much. By the way, Missouri with a 1-point lead against UCLA with 4.8 seconds left, I believe, off the top of my head, whereas a 3-point lead in this one. So yes, I did feel pretty confident. Excuse me if it didn't go Missouri's way. But generally, this is, of course, a common refrain. The idea that, Missouri Mizzou'd it up. Anytime Missouri loses a heartbreaking game, you heard it against Texas A&M in some of the comments, that type of stuff. But that's just a weird confirmation bias to me. A real negative confirmation bias that would be a tough thing to live with, I would think, as a human being. But secondly, doesn't really match up with reality. How quickly we forget the 2023 season when Missouri stole a couple games on some near half-court buzzer beaters by DeAndre Golston. So that's the basketball side. Well, how about the football side? If you still want to focus on 2022, you can certainly pick some weird and unforgettable moments against Auburn in particular that season. I don't even have to remind you of what happened there, do I? Also against Kentucky, the roughing the punter penalty. Yeah, 2022, Missouri had its fair share of bad breaks, without a doubt. But then 2023 came along, and 2024 as well. Think about the 4th and 17. Think about Harrison Mevis making a 61-yarder to win the game against Kansas State. Missouri winning, yes, a low-scoring, close game against the vaunted Ohio State Buckeyes in the Cotton Bowl. If Missouri were truly cursed, wouldn't all these things gone wrong, even last year against Auburn? Go back and watch that game. Well, I'll remember it as the Brady Cook game, his incredible perseverance and comeback from injury in that game, bringing Missouri back from down 10, I believe. Well, I can remember at least one moment in that game that it seemed like the ball was on the money for an Auburn receiver. That pass was dropped. If it's caught for a touchdown, I'm not so sure Missouri wins that game. Again, the idea that Missouri has gotten nothing but bad breaks and will continue to get nothing with bad breaks for all of time, it just doesn't really match with reality. And by the way, it is understandable in a lot of ways because, of course, hey, I've been here for all this stuff, at least from the late 80s, that type of deal. Missouri has not won a conference championship in basketball since 1994. They haven't won one in football since 1969. So it's natural for when something goes on for that long for you to think, oh my God, it'll never change. It's never going to happen. Heck, that's what Kansas City Chiefs fans thought all the way until Patrick Mahomes came along. People thought Andy Reid was a loser who was never going to win the big one. Just an offensive coach, but couldn't really manage a game, wasn't really cut out to actually win the big one. And again, then Patrick Mahomes suddenly comes along and everything changes. And if you're not a Chiefs fan, you're probably sick of the Kansas City Chiefs and their fans at this point, probably being a little bit too cocky. The point is, all of that negativity that Chiefs fans carried around for decades, well, I think that's gone now. Even if you're bummed out, of course, you lose the Super Bowl to the Philadelphia Eagles. It'd be really tough to just say, well, the Chiefs, they just Chiefsed it up again. They're never going to win. See, I told you, the Chiefs, they always choke in the end. See how stupid that sounds? Well, eventually, it's going to sound pretty stupid if and when Missouri actually wins a conference title, for example, someday. And the way things are trending with Dennis Gates, by the way, specifically, I would bet on that at Missouri. I would bet on Dennis Gates winning an SEC title during his time at Missouri. That's how highly I think of Dennis Gates, despite the fact that, yes, I think he made at least a couple mistakes to finish that ball game. But you know what? Lots of us make mistakes in life. And the good thing about Dennis Gates is I think he's a learning type of human being. I think he learns from his mistakes. I think he's self-reflective enough to be intelligent enough to, like he said, whether you agree with it or not, hey, he said, I should have taken a timeout there with 9 seconds left and set my defense. Well, one listener, by the way, didn't agree with that. He said he wouldn't have called a timeout. He thought Gates actually did the right thing. Don't let the offense get set and run a perfect play. And there is certainly a lot of logic to that particular argument. I personally disagree with that simply because in this particular situation, 9 seconds, 3-point game, I think the defense has the advantage. So in that situation, I think you get your team on the same page. By the way, as to whether you want to foul or not, that's a whole other discussion that I went into a little bit yesterday. But of course, you get everybody on the same page and say, hey, we either are going to foul as soon as they get to half court or after 3 seconds, whatever your strategy might be, get everybody absolutely on the same page. Or you say, hey, we're not going to foul, and here's how we're going to play this defensively. Nobody set your feet inside of the 3-point line, for instance, and we'll figure it out from there. Whatever your strategy is, the point is Missouri scores. You don't know exactly. You knock down 2 free throws. You don't know exactly what the situation is going to be until it presents itself. And again, you can't take that timeout with you either. So the point here in breaking all that down is I think the listener actually does make a good point there, even though I don't totally agree with what he's saying, that yes, you are allowing the offense, of course, to set itself to get in its proper lineup, to substitute, to draw up whatever might be the perfect play, for them to get in on the same page as well. So without a doubt, it's not as though it's obvious that, well, if Missouri would have called a timeout, then definitely they would have won the game. There's a real argument there for sure. Just in my opinion, if you're the defense, if you're the one who has the advantage, let's stop everything, make sure we're set, make sure we're all on the same page, because actually a scramble scenario there where the offense can inbound the ball quickly, they're off and running, I actually think that's a little bit more to the offense's advantage in that particular situation. And on the football field, as much as I think we all love Brady Cook, I think we can agree he wasn't Chase Daniel at Missouri. But what if Brady Cook actually is Chase Daniel in the NFL? I'll explain exactly what I'm talking about here in a minute. And on the football field, as much as I think we all love Brady Cook, I think we can agree he wasn't Chase Daniel at Missouri. But what if Brady Cook actually is Chase Daniel in the NFL? I'll explain exactly what I'm talking about here in a minute. But first, Roy, Mizzou fans, ever wished you could directly support your favorite Mizzou athletes and be part of their journey? Well, now you can with Roy, the NIL app that puts fans in control. Before Roy, NIL deals were often handled behind closed doors, and fans like you didn't have a clear way to directly support the players that you love. Well, now with Roy, you can make a real impact and feel closer to the athletes representing Missouri. With Roy, you get to choose the player you want to support, decide how much you want to contribute, and get exclusive content straight from the athletes you back. And here's the best part. If the player transfers, you get your money back. So it's a risk-free way to show your support and make your voice heard. Support your favorite players directly and shape the future of Mizzou sports. Download the Roy app now from the App Store and start backing Missouri athletes the way they deserve, with transparency, trust, and real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite players. So I'm sure many of you are watching the NFL Combine this past weekend, and I have to say, I don't know if Brady Cook solidified himself as a drafted player in the NFL, but I definitely, without a doubt, think he's going to be a priority undrafted free agent for some team at the very least. I really think that with Cook's really impressive performance at the NFL Combine, excuse me, not only throwing the ball really impressively, but also his overall athleticism score was not off the charts, but really high up on the charts. That's for damn sure. And in fact, an unofficial 33rd out of 989 quarterbacks since the year 1987. So basically, since 87, Brady Cook in the top 3 percentile, more or less, of NFL quarterbacks. Ran a 4.59 in the 40-yard dash very impressively, and maybe most impressively of all, a broad jump number that was just an inch shy of the all-time quarterback number for that particular jump. That was set by Anthony Richardson a couple of years ago. Now, of course, Brady Cook, with all that impressive athleticism, not as big as Anthony Richardson, not as strong of an arm either. So the upside, not as high. And it's viewed that, well, Brady Cook's upside is maybe as an NFL backup. But I'll tell you this, as Chase Daniel will tell you, that is not the worst thing in the world. And really, I think if Cook, like Daniel, number one, Brady Cook is going to impress people in interviews and any type of in-person meetup. By all accounts, just an impressive, intelligent guy and leader is Brady Cook. So all of those intangibles are going to help him, are going to make him be a good part of a locker room, a good backup quarterback. Perhaps if, someday you hope he's around the league for a while, he can be a mentor to your next starter, perhaps. Again, maybe Brady Cook is the next Brock Purdy, and a totally under-the-radar guy who ends up being a starter in the NFL for a long time. Maybe that happens. But I'm just simply saying right now, if Brady Cook buries his face into a playbook, if he just learns all of he can about this game, just keeps working out, and by the way, keeps his body healthy, because when he's healthy, he looks like a different guy. As we saw, I think, in the Music City Bowl, and as we saw here in the NFL Combine too, when Brady is 100% healthy, he is a real plus, just in terms of getting outside of the pocket, making things happen, and design quarterback runs, and of course scrambles as well. So Cook is a guy who has all the intangibles and a decent athletic profile as well. So I think he is draftable personally. I'm just not going to guarantee it. What I will guarantee is that Cook's going to get a long look on somebody's roster this coming fall for sure. I think he's going to get every chance to at least make a squad. So that'll be interesting. It really will. I was very happy for Brady, as a huge fan of his, to have that showing at the NFL Combine. Hard to imagine he could have had a better showing, really. And you know what? Since we're discussing end-of-game strategy, I thought it'd be good to hear from somebody who's actually coached. In fact, former Marquette High School coach Shane Matson, who's been a guest on this program, former coach of the Rossbergs of Mizzou basketball fame, among others. Well, Shane says, I think I could make a lot of money touring the country and putting on coaches' clinics for the large segment of our coaching population who still do not want to foul up 3 late. The topic, you ask, what I call the umbrella zone. 5 guys whose only concern is defending an area from the arc out to 12 to as far as 10 to 12 feet, even beyond the 3-point arc. And Shane continues, and before anyone thinks I'm smarter than everybody else, this defense came about from getting burned in the same way as the Vanderbilt game happened. Coaching is a tough gig. We're all better at it the higher we get in the bleachers or the further settled down we are in our recliners. I made the same decision to not foul at Kirkwood about 20 years ago. Hard lesson, but I did learn from it. Coach Gates will too. And especially that last sentiment there, I totally agree. I think Coach Gates will 100% learn from that. And again, if he doesn't think the solution is to foul something like the umbrella zone that Coach Matson described there, that is the ticket. Certainly switching every ball screen and even every off-ball screen there that's trying to get a shooter open, you got to at least go over the top of that screen, right? But I would say switch absolutely everything. Get your 5 defensive players out there. And again, this is where calling timeout is important. But get your 5 best lengthy defenders, switchable defenders out there as well. Make sure Tony Perkins is out there, just for example, that type of thing. Maybe Aiden Shaw should have been out there on that last possession defensively for Missouri. Again, as Matson says there, easy from the recliner, easy the higher you get up in the bleachers, no doubt about that. But the important thing here is that I still have all the confidence in the world that Dennis Gates will fix this and eventually get it right. It's just a bummer because, well, as Missouri basketball fans, these type of seasons haven't come along very often, so you absolutely want to cash in on every opportunity you can. And a positive update from Eli Drinkwitz on Missouri center Connor Tollison. Drinkwitz says Tollison already back to snapping the football in 7-on-7 drills. No full contact, though, yet, as you might imagine, recovering from a serious knee injury there. But the fact that he's even getting down into a stance and snapping the ball sounds like a positive update to me, and just a positive tone from Eli as well. Also, he had a lot of praise for, well, a new Missouri offensive lineman as well, Dominic Gaidice. I have absolutely no idea how to pronounce this young man's name. So somebody help me out there on the transfer from Michigan, who's probably going to be a guard with Missouri, I would imagine. But right now, he's playing some center, and Drinkwitz said, hey, Connor Tollison, we may have a Wally Pipp, Lou Gehrig situation there, just needling his veteran starting center there. But did seem like a good sign there for some of these new guys on the offensive line. At least, hey, it all sounds good in spring anyway. Drinkwitz says it always starts with athleticism for us. We want big, long, athletic guys, and then toughness is the priority. Also, we've got to make sure they're a scheme fit. We start with the outside zone. We felt like those guys were athletic enough and able to handle said outside zone. And after his performance at the Combine, Luther Burden III tweeted out, "Thank you, God." So I think it's safe to say Luther was pretty happy with himself after that one. Let's talk about him and Armand Membou. What a couple of, I think, fair questions on the two of them heading into the draft. But before I get there, first, when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip or you just want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, of course, you can combine live bets into a same-game parlay as well. And whether I'm backing my team for a late rally or picking a player, by the way, to hit a clutch three-pointer, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is so easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So while some of the top receivers in the draft chose not to work out at the Combine, Luther Burden III did, and it's certainly paid off for him, I would say, running a 4.42 in the 40, and I believe a 4.41, so let's say a 4.41 there for Luther Burden in the 40-yard dash. And checking in at 206 pounds at that weight, I'd say that's an absolutely fantastic number for Burden, and by all accounts looked good in the gauntlet. That the other testing, that type of deal, I'd say. And also Armand Membou, same deal. I'd say both guys obviously made the correct decision to come out early and frankly skip the bowl game as well. Get healthy, get as healthy as you can, get ready for the Combine, because both guys performed very, very well in the Combine. In fact, in the last 20 years, Armand Membou, only one of four guys who is over 315 pounds, but also had a vertical leap over 30 inches and a sub 5-second 40-yard dash. I'll say that again. At 315 pounds, four guys in the last 20 years have been able to jump higher than 30 inches vertically and sub 5 seconds in the 40-yard dash. Armand Membou is one of them. San Francisco 49ers great Trent Williams is another, by the way. So some really impressive company that really all of the guys who worked out this weekend, all of them tested very, very well. The Tigers may well have taken gold, silver, and bronze in the underwear Olympics this past weekend. The only nits that you really can pick, I think, with either one, Luther Burden's hands are a tiny bit on the small side. He had his share of drops at Missouri. I never would go as far to say it was a massive problem or anything like that, but that is something that NFL teams are going to scrutinize a little bit. But what I think, the biggest thing that I think Burden did is he solidified his top-end speed for his size and also his change of direction. And I think he showed some real smoothness with his route running. I've said for a while now, I think he has higher upside in that particular part of his game. I think there's more to unlock there with Luther Burden. If you're worried about his small hands, that's about the only thing you have to worry about. And similarly with Armand Membou, the only thing I would really question at all with him at this point is the length of his arms, which sounds silly. I totally understand because, well, it's not as though Membou has the shortest arms in the world at 6'4.5". As you'd imagine, his arms are pretty long. In fact, they're about average as far as NFL tackles who have been measured out over the last 30 years or so. So really, it's not even so much, hey, is that going to hurt Armand Membou as an NFL player? The question is just more, well, is he a tackle or a guard? Because if your arms are just a little bit on the shorter side, that wingspan really does matter against those elite pass rushers on the outside in the National Football League. So if anything, I'd say Membou will be a devastating guard at the NFL level. But based on the fact that, by all accounts, he's going to be a top 15, perhaps even top 10 kind of pick, Chase Daniel, speaking of him, well, the Fox Sports analyst now, Chase Daniel, doesn't think Membou is going to get outside of the top 10. So that tells me that obviously the team who's going to pick him in the top 10 thinks he can play tackle, because typically you're not taking a guard that high. So, again, the only real nit to pick there with Membou, seems like most of the teams around the league aren't terribly concerned about it. And thanks for making Locked On Mizzou your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On College Basketball to be the most fully informed March Madness fan you possibly can be before the tournament even gets here. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And until tomorrow, I am John Miller, and this has been Locked on Mizzou.